Okay, so continuing on here, when it comes to looking at the interior of your car before you purchase, one of the things I like to look at is, you come down in here, you look at your carpet areas, see how the carpet looks. Ask the seller if it's okay to maybe pull up some of the carpet here where it folds over, because again, this is where the heater channels are, and you're going to want to check and see if there's any rust underneath. A lot of times these heater channels do have rust, and the seller just put carpeting over it just to cover it, so you really can't see it. So this is an area usually where heater channels always rust, and it's up in here, up in this corner here where the vent is, where the heat vent is. You're going to want to check around in there, feel around, see if you feel any crunching at all. I usually pull up the carpet, pull up the mat. You're going to want to see underneath the mat. A lot of times there might be tar boards underneath the mat that are stuck to the floor, so you maybe can't pull those up. But if you can pull them up, good indication that the floor is rusted. And of course, get down on your knees and then underneath the car and check there if you're not on a lift. But you can pull up the carpet and then you can see the tar boards that are there. If they're on there pretty strong, good indication the pans are pretty good. But press on them. You might hear some crunching, and if you can pull up that tar board and it's pulling up in pieces, good indication that the floors are probably have some rust to them. So this is another area you want to check out. Again, check the firewall section. The most notorious is down here, and then usually if this is rusted, usually if you look under the front wheel well, like I showed you before, and that shows some rust. Good sign. It's also continuing on the inside here as well. So you're going to want to definitely check that out. Okay, other areas right off the bat, once you open a door, is the door sill area itself. I always like to check these and make sure that there's no paint coming off. A lot of times you'll see heater channels that already have the holes through the top here on the outside. I have seen guys that buy a plate that go over this section right here and they just weld it on. You can usually see the edge of the new plate that they welded on here. So if you see two layers, good indication that they just patched that up. You want to check the corners. This is where the heat channel welds to the post, the door post areas. I'll zoom in over here. That's another area. If you see any sort of rot or bubbling there or any crunching there, that's a job to do. A lot of people will tell you that is also an easy fix, but in order to fix that, you have to buy a plate and then re-weld that to the heater channel, and then you still have to then repaint. So then you get into painting, and that opens up a whole other can of worms. So it's not something that you could fix, and then if you wanted to jump back in the car, I mean, I guess you could fix that, jump back in the car and you didn't care that it wasn't painted, but usually people are going to want that painted. So the door sill areas are usually a good indication. Now, another tight area is in between the door sill area and the running board. I usually like to grab the running boards and rock them up and down and see if you hear anything in there. So I mentioned this once before. A lot of times if the heater channel is rotted and you move this running board up and down, you'll hear the crunching in there. So definitely take a peek down in there. Sometimes these guys don't even bolt the heater channel to the rocker. They just have it bolted to the fenders. So definitely take a peek at that. Okay, another area I like to check on a Volkswagen is under the back seat. I do like to ask the seller first if I can lift up the back seat to see what's underneath. If they come off a little hesitant and not wanting you to see under there, that's kind of a red flag for me. Usually either they've never seen what's under there and they're afraid to see what's going on, or they know what's under there and they don't want to show you. But I do like to check, and it's a vital area I think that everybody must look at before purchasing. It's pretty simple to do. You just lift up the seat from this divider bar. The seat should pop right up without an issue. And the first place I go to is, of course, looking where the battery sits. The battery areas are notorious for rotting on Volkswagens, and due to the battery acid that leaks from the battery. So you want to look all in and around the battery area. Also look up where the heater channel runs through and that butts back to the luggage compartment. You want to make sure that there's no holes. Poke around a little bit, see if you can bring that implement with you, and see if you go through anywhere. Also want to check the VIN number. And finally, look where the VIN number sits, which is right here. And then you want to grab that VIN number and then look at the VIN tag in the front in the trunk and make sure this number matches what's on the tag. If you're matching, to me, you're good to go. If you're not matching or the guy is missing the tag in the front, I usually walk away. But that's your preference. I know it might be tough to see, but you can also then look underneath the seat, the back seat, and see what kind of padding they put in. If they did reupholster their seats, they might have just left the original horsehair there, and you can see if it's flaking down. A lot of times, if the original horsehair is there, you'll see all the flakes, all the brittle of the horsehair falling apart, and it'll be all over under the back seat. So, you want to make sure. He might have just recovered them and never repadded the seats. If that's usually the case, and it's really falling apart like that, you're really gonna have to then take the seat apart and then repad them. So, okay, another crucial area you want to look at on the interior is, of course, the headliner. Now, the headliner is probably one of the most difficult tests to do in your interior, for anyone's interior, really, when it comes to doing the bug. They do sell multiple kits to go into your bug, depending on your year. This is a 67 bug, and from 64 on up, they basically had, it's almost like a one-piece headliner, and then there was a tuck around the back window. I don't know if you can see that. See the tuck around the back window. They sell kits now that are just a one-piece that actually gets rid of that tuck, so it goes from the opening of the window all the way to the opening of the back window, which looks fine. I mean, it's no big deal. I really don't know why Volkswagen put that tuck back there to begin with. But you want to look and see. A lot of times these guys try to attempt to do the headliners themselves, and doing it with the vinyl, you'll see a lot of wrinkles. I see a lot of times usually around the back windows and stuff up into these areas, you'll see wrinkles. So you definitely want to check that. Now, the vinyl headliners came in 63 on upwards. 62 and back was like a cloth headliner, like a wool, or some people they put mohair now into their headliners. Ivory mohair headliners, beige mohair headliners, gray mohair headliners, things like that. Wolfsburg West sells those kits. But you want to make sure that it was professionally done. I see many times the problem areas are around the back window and down below the back window. Many guys just can't get the tucks right, or they just cannot seem to get it straight, and there's too many flaps, or you see a lot of glue sprayed and too many tucks and folds and whatnot. So take a peek at that. I mean, if it's not too much of a concern for you, that's okay, but I like to have a nice clean headliner, of course. And if you did have to change the headliner, it's, again, not something that's an easy fix. You got to take all the windows out, and it's usually a good day's job. If you're good, you could probably have it done in a few hours. But it's usually a day's job or so. I do sell a DVD on a ragtop headliner installation, which should also work for multi-piece headliner. Now, the multi-piece headliner was from 63 and earlier. I mean, they had the tuck around the back window like you see here in the 67, but they also had up the pillars, see where the dome light is, all the way up. That was its own separate tuck as well, and it kind of wrapped down to the back window. And then the center headliner section was its own square piece as well, so it went to the back window, up above that pillar, and up to the front here. So yeah, 63 and earlier had the multi-piece, and 64 and later then went to more one piece with just a tuck around the back window. So a couple things you would just want to take a look at. A lot of times you'll see some cars that were maybe originally owned by an old lady, or the old guy that just never abused his car, and you'll be surprised sometimes that some headliners have held up over the years. Yeah, they might be stained or have some sun damage, but that might be okay to you. And just want to check if there's no tears or anything and things hanging down, but it's pretty obvious when you look at a headliner if it's needing replacement or not. And then a lot of times, usually, if the car did have a respray, and if it wasn't a good respray, these guys didn't tape off the wind lace here too well. I've seen cars where now the wind laces, say this is a blue car and they resprayed it blue. The windlaces would also be blue, which kind of stinks, and I hate looking at that. So if you want to just replace the windlace, you could do it, but the problem is it only comes in the whole kit for the headliner, so you can't really buy this separate. And the windlace is usually the first piece that goes on to your headliner first. So, you know, when you have to take this out, you have to move away the tuck at the top here, where the headliner, see the top part of the headliner tucks around the windlace. So a little bit of a project there, but anyways, that's headliners.